Be very deliberate in the expectations you have when you're sourcing candidates. Ensure that you're not looking for people that are only just good on paper, but you're asking the hard questions about how they synthesize ideas, how they deal with a large cross-functional mess that is created when you're a new org that is very new, trying to work with established teams. Now, there's not like a perfect template to this, but I think there's a decent formula, which is figure out if they're going to think about more than just the ads themselves.
Welcome to Unlocking Retail Media, the podcast where we explore the evolving world of retail media, from data strategy to monetization and everything in between. This is the podcast that breaks down how retailers can build smarter, data-driven media networks by aligning with what brands truly need, from scalable ad solutions and meaningful metrics to cross-channel attribution and programmatic strategy.
Today, I'm excited to welcome someone who's been shaping retail media long before it was the buzzy category that it is today. My guest is Ben Johnson, the Senior Director of Chewy Ads. Before Chewy, Ben spent several years at Coupang, leading sponsored products at a time when many global marketplaces were just beginning to build ad businesses. And before that, he built a career in ad tech at places like OpenX and 33Across. Ben was actually one of the first people to work with Kevel on building a retail media use case way back in 2018. And so he's been pretty instrumental in helping us build our product in the direction that we've built it. Today, we're going to talk about how retail media has evolved, what maturity really looks like, and how Chewy has built such a strong retail media network. Ben, thanks for being here. It's great to chat again.
Yeah, hey, James. Good to be here.
Awesome. So let's, maybe we start out and kind of go back to the beginning, because I think we first worked together when you were at Coupang, and you guys kind of were, this is what, 2008, 18, 17, like you were really building a retail media network before a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah. I'll just say that when you said let's go back, I thought you were going to take me back to when we were enemies competing for ad server deals. But,
yeah, we did start as enemies between OpenX and AdZerk, but I figured we'd skip that part,
Yeah, fair enough. I thought it was a fun little tidbit, but in any case, so the year is, I want to say 2018 or 2019, and Coupang, for the audience who watches this and may not know, is effectively the Amazon of South Korea. They were a hyper growth, not startup anymore, but mid to late stage company that was basically getting the adoption and eyes and visibility of every single citizen in South Korea. We had been hired to build monetization for the company, but to your point, when you kicked this off, the moniker or acronym of RMN, or retail media, had not yet existed. And we were often just trying to figure out what we should do without any guidance. I think we did pretty well. We were able to put together a solution in market, I want to say 6 to 9 months after I joined, which is when we built the team out. And along with that, we built the team. So it was a pretty remarkable velocity, given that strategy, how we ran our day-to-day, how we built the team, and somehow managed to build it all in that same time frame, all kind of panned out and worked out for us.
Yeah, I think it was really impressive. I mean, just the scale, right? You're like you said, a lot of people don't, Coupang's not a household name over here. But the scale is, probably still, even back then was probably larger than many retailers today. When we think about the amount of traffic, the amount of orders, the fulfillment, kind of like the size, of scope of like what was built there.
Yeah, I mean, some innovations that Coupang had long before even Amazon in the US was they owned their own fulfillment network much earlier than others, even though they made a pivot to retail and had started as a more 3P eBay marketplace style marketplace. The kind of basis of Coupang was to make it so that you couldn't live without it. It was just so easy to basically use it on a day-to-day. And in terms of absolutes, obviously Amazon is bigger. It's a bigger market in the US. But in terms of relative values, penetration in the market itself, and how many people in South Korea adopt their phones as their surface for everything. We had great kind of engagement, which put me in a great position, honestly, to build a product, because the demand was close to just banging the door down and breaking it open, regardless if we had a product or not. Now, obviously, that comes with expectations. You got to build the right thing. But it's still a good problem to have, that you don't have a product that people really, really want.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of mentioned it, talking about product. I mean, your role at Coupang and now at Chewy, right? Like, you're really effectively the head of product for these RMNs.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that's something we were talking a little bit before this, where, it's one of the things because obviously we go talk to a bunch of retailers, a bunch of different people trying to build RMNs. And a lot of times I feel like there's not enough focus given to who is really designing, who is the product lead for an RMN. Yeah. So I think it'd be helpful for people for you to kind of talk about what does that mean? What does it mean to be product when in an RMN?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll answer it, but I'll also say it's impossible to answer. And what I mean by that is product management, regardless of it being at an ad tech company, a SaaS company, B2C, is somewhat nebulous in its definition, right? The romanticized version of a product manager is, I think mini CEO is what a lot of people like to say. In my opinion, the role can differ from company to company, but the fundamentals of it should stay the same. And I actually believe that romanticized definition is what a PM should truly do, which is guiding a larger cross-functional group in decision-making and allowing that PM to construct the opinions that often come in as noise, and you have to distill them into signal. Another great kind of comparison to this with orgs that maybe have some uncertainty here is in the early 2010s, companies were moving to agile and maybe even a little bit earlier than that. Often what companies did was they picked and chose the pieces of agile they liked and maintained their own processes. My belief is with product, that romanticized version is actually how you empower a product team to drive productivity within your business. Put trust and credibility in an individual to be the connective tissue amongst not only the ads teams in the case of an RMN, but the external teams that need to be worked with in participation to either schedule a dependency, work on a joint strategy, whatever it may be. That's how I define product. And why I said I can't answer it at the same time is generally, if you're looking for a specialty to hire an individual, you look for background, right? Do they have this experience prior to coming on? I think in product management, cognitive diversity is more powerful than having just, a lot of very strong people from a single discipline. Obviously, both can work out, but if you're a product team that has some very technical products and then some more customer-facing products, let's use B2B for this example. Someone with a sales background is going to bring diversity to someone who has an engineering background, an analytics background, whatever it may be. So that's where it's impossible to answer because, in my opinion, anyone can be a good product manager. The construct is this connective tissue, but the cognitive diversity that you can have people from different disciplines be successful in this role is, I think, what makes it so nebulous, but also kind of awesome at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting when you think about I was having a conversation recently with somebody about how kind of RMNs are structured and the kind of different maturity levels. And I think one of the key things we look for is there somebody owning kind of product and strategy at an RMN, or have they just really outsourced that to their vendors? Right? Like you look at some of the a retailer who maybe is, pretty early, like a much lower maturity retail media network. They might have a head of the retail media network.
Yeah.
They have a sales team. They have, maybe some ad ops, then they have a couple engineers, right? But there's not somebody sitting there saying, what unit should we be developing? What are the new trends in the industry we should be looking at? How should we be addressing these, what we're hearing from the brands or what we're hearing in the market? right?
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I would say that it's likely an okay strategy to start, because often you can find product leaders within your staffing, right? That nebulous kind of cognitive diverse uh, hiring that you often do with product. And, for what it's worth, the when you have 4 or 5 people, or maybe you're a team of one to start, which it always has to start with one first hire, you kind of have to cede some control. Because regardless of how fast you hire, if you want to move fast, develop, and release, there's going to be the need for some partnership, right? So, personally, I think product drives a lot of value upfront in an organization. Obviously, there's some bias there since my career has been in product management. But I think if you hire the right product leader, effectively what you get is a leader in every division of what your organizational structure needs to serve. Now, me as a product leader, my core focus is product, but there's a decent amount of analytics, sales assistance, understanding the business, building strategy that I think a very strong product manager can have. And to your point of what units we release, what we do, it's how do you see what you want your platform to be 3, 4, 5 years from now? And what are those stepping stones on the bridge that help you cross in a way that logically orders itself? And that's where product can certainly help, which is build me a strategy, make it make sense over an extended time series, and give me a sense of the value I can drive for my enterprise kind of core business or core business objectives. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents there, but I think either with or without product during formation, things can work out, but you definitely want a staff product management to have that long-term thinking embedded within your organization as a fixed discipline.
Yeah, I think people tend to, get a little mixed up with, a like line product manager, right? Where it's like, you're gonna need somebody who is, working with the engineers who are actually implementing, things on the website and maybe it's building out a self-serve, things like that. And then really when you think of somebody like a VP of product, or you think of somebody like a chief product officer, where it really is thinking about, like you said, the long-term strategy. Where do next, well, spoil it, right? Next you go to Chewy, and it's like you come into Chewy and it's like, okay, like what is it we want? What do we need to build? What's different about Chewy? What's different about the market? What is the market asking for? What are the opportunities? What does this look like in 5 years? And then how do we get there?
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is I'll actually make two points on this. I think a lot of misconception with product managers is they're often like given the title, but asked to be a project manager.
Right.
So your line product manager, as you described, often just gets top-down marching orders to do this, do that, and they're scored on the completion of if this or that launched on a target date that no one could actually estimate, that they just need to push their teams to get to. I do think within a good product organization, from the top down, your head of product all the way down to your first product or your entry level product manager, there's something you can empower your teams to do. Meaning, okay, maybe I think 3 to 4 to 5 years ahead, but within the constraints or confines of the product that my junior PM works on, they're thinking about that maybe over a shorter time series, but they're delivering week over week over week. And then what additionally, a junior or starting PM can do is empower accountability amongst the engineers. We don't want it to be just a handoff. Hey, I've got an idea. Leadership said it's great. Go build it. It's here's the problem we're solving. Here's the metrics where we're going to measure if we're good. I want you all to believe that these metrics tell us that we're doing good, and make an entire team feel accountable, because velocity, you measure in terms of hours spent against work done. But I think there's a soft skill tied to velocity, which is driving accountability and empowerment. Now, those are the 2 points on the product side of it. With Chewy, the interesting thing is I worked at a very, very large company in South Korea, being Coupang, where, I learned a ton about how retail works, how 3P marketplaces work, as we had both. I worked in a very fast moving environment that Asia is. And I came to Chewy thinking, okay, playbook's ready. Let's just use that and I'm good to go. And then I think within 24 hours of being at the company, I had to throw out that playbook. Now, there were some fundamentals you can bring in terms of what things typically break if you don't invest enough time in them. But being a successful retail media network is bespoke to how your customers behave on said network. The main distinction, although Coupang had it, is Chewy is a very highly penetrated subscription retailer, meaning that our feature, auto ship, is often used, which makes sense if you think about our buying behavior and who our customers are. They're pet parents. They're looking for something that, they can't talk to their dog or cat or reptile or horse about, but they just have to observe, hey, do you like this food? Do you get sick? Do you look healthy? Well, I found something. Let me just have to set it and forget it. Make sure I don't have to drive out and carry 100-pound bag to my car and then back in my home. Let it just arrive exactly when I need it. So with all that being said, we had to lean into that from an ads business. And, without revealing the secret sauce, the point being at Chewy is when a customer comes, the intent is there and the opportunity to win a customer for their lifetime value is there right away. So we've engineered our ad platform and brought to market not only a campaign execution side, but a reporting and analytics suite that emphasizes the upside of that LTV driven by our subscription-based business. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great. I was going to lead into this is really like, as joining Chewy, building out a new RMN. I think a lot of people do look at this as cookie cutter, get the playbook, rinse and repeat. But I think, and we can't share numbers and stuff like that. But I mean, you guys are killing it, right? Like we work with lots of retail media networks, and you guys are doing. You have built probably one of the best ones out there, right? Like you're competing with the Amazons and Walmarts and people like that at the level of sophistication.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is a great example of that. Of you can't just come in and rinse and repeat. It's really understanding what's different about this retailer. What's their relationship like? Is it are they heavily researching what they're doing? Are they auto shipping it? Are they, how connected are they to it? Right. Like, and I know, obviously Chewy's done a great job, like in overall branding, right. Of like being very, very understanding of pet parents and how they think of their pets and how serious they are about getting the right food and the right medicine and things like that for their animals. And so I think it's like the retail media network has to reflect the relationship of the consumer with Chewy and how they interact and really building it in the way that makes sense for that retailer, not just off the shelf, set it up and go.
Right. And you leave a lot on the table if you bring that playbook without making any augmentations. The other thing I would say is that your brands or your advertisers who will eventually buy on your retail media network when you have one already have a thesis of why they're bringing budget to your platform, either from a competitor or just brand new budget established. And what they're looking for is for you to prove that out, right? So I as pet brand A come to Chewy and buy on Chewy because I think I'm more likely to get a subscription to my product. Drives brand loyalty. I can acquire customers that are new to my brand because this is the biggest pet marketplace. And I'm going to spend money here and have it kind of be like a fire hose if the company is growing like crazy. But in addition to that, that thesis is only as good as the RMN that proves out what the brands already hypothesize. And that's where you kind of have to tie things together to make a more compelling product to bring to market. Now, the playbook will work for some period of time, but I think having the constant chip on your shoulder of thinking you're different and how you're different is going to help more than it'll hurt.
Yeah, and I think
No one's
it,
like
it goes,
Amazon, right? I mean,
yeah,
Walmart,
yeah,
you could say, well, and no one's like Walmart either. And trying to be like them it feels like I don't know if a race to the bottom is the right phrase, but effectively you can't compete with that type of horsepower that those organizations have. You need to carve out your niche and understand what your customers want versus copy paste of features, which you can never keep up with. Sorry, I
yeah.
interrupted you.
And it's so interesting where like we're in all the different retailers and marketplaces that we work with, you know, they are all unique, right? Like for the most part, maybe there's some, there's a handful of grocers that are similar or things like that, but even they have unique constraints, right? Some are selling a lot more private labels, some are selling a lot more, in store, right? Or are they predominantly in store, predominantly online?
Yeah.
What's the relationship? Is it, people that shop there every week, or are they, is it like a 7-Eleven where it's like, oh, it's just on the corner. So,
Right.
I'm going to grab something.
Yeah.
And so I do think like when it comes back, to circle this back to like, what does product do at a retail media network? It's kind of like, this is what product does, right? It's like, it is understanding
Yeah.
what do we need to build based on the, uniqueness of us as a retailer. What's the perfect RMN that's going to generate the, most revenue, have the best user experience, have the best brand experience, kind of, looking at all those different constituents and bringing it together. And I think that's like, it's where we always encourage when we talk to retailers, just like, you need, like, find this product person, like find this product strategy person that can really help you build this vision. And then, then there's tools and vendors and companies out there to kind of help accelerate it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we talked about it more philosophically, and then I walked you through my train of thought. That was what I was thinking about on day one, right?
Yeah.
And I think you described it perfectly. That, yeah, I mean, a product leader is going to be hyper focused in this area, which is writing the story of your RMN 5 years out and understanding what building blocks you need for that story to end favorably. So
right,
it's no, I think you did a good job putting that on.
And you guys have also, I think one of the very impressive things about what you all have built is that you really haven't used a bunch of just off the shelf whatever kind of tech, right? Like I think you guys made the decision early on to kind of build out your own full self-serve.
Yeah.
So what was the decision like there? Because I think a lot of other retailers have that decision of like, oh, should we just use, I mean, like Kevel, we have like off the shelf self-serve, things like that. Or does it make sense to go invest and really build your own self-serve?
Yeah. So it's not a one answer fits all approach, but I can kind of give you my philosophy here, which is, there are plenty of off the shelf point solutions, and we're not even just talking about ad serving here. We're talking about reporting, we're talking about audience, we're talking about everything that is what the composition of a retail media network or ad company at a publisher looks like. And I think if you're deliberate, you go through the appropriate due diligence, it's a really good way to incubate your program, right? Yes, maybe you cede some control to something or some tool that gives you less autonomy, but it helps you get started. And getting started is the most important piece of a business, because often, even in my strategy, what I can talk about so clearly now was a lot of hypotheses that many things I was wrong on until we got to market and saw how our customers reacted. Especially to your point, if you're really trying to build a bespoke or niche solution for your customers to give you, I like to call it a technical moat. You've got to test it in market, which is okay to work with a couple of partners. Now, often I think what happens is so many point solutions are out there, and companies can get into this cycle of, we're just so dependent on this, tied together loosely set of integrations we have with multiple partners that they feel like there's no way out. And the way out is to be thinking about where you want to be, regardless of where you have to be at your present day, wherever you are.
Right.
My personal philosophy here is get something started the most efficient and fastest way possible, but evaluate throughout your entire journey, like where you want to be. And in the case of the companies I've worked at, it's focused on platform independence, more autonomy and more control. In the beginning, when we're launching though, we don't want to do a 180 to what our advertisers are used to on other retailers and give them something brand new. We incrementally introduce that learning curve over time. So that autonomy is not necessarily important for the first 6 to 12 months. But after that, as you're building a strategy that is very unique to you, that independence, to your point, is incredibly important.
Yeah. And so when you think about, I think we've talked a little bit about like kind of how we design it, thinking about the different constituents. Like, how do you think about, because like in a retail media network, you have, obviously the core business, you have the, brands, right? The actual companies advertising, right, to sell more product. Yeah. You have the users. How do you think about balancing all of those, right? Like, how do you think about that, like the user experience and the brand experience and what Chewy's objectives are?
Yeah, that's a great question. It kind of gets deeper into the tactics of not just our strategy, but how we were able to successfully execute. So, we didn't know what we didn't know when we started at Chewy. The ads team here at Chewy, or the Chewy Ads team, I should say, we're 2 brand new hires, myself and our current VP. We were coming into a business with a leadership team that deeply understood the product, nothing that could be taught in days, months, and arguably years. The constituents, to your point, we had to meet with across the board. Obviously, you can't meet with every customer who shops on Chewy. There are millions of them. But we leverage data to better understand what their behaviors are, what their tendencies are. And then we understand what the core operating tenets for Chewy are to ensure that we maintain those as we build out our products. And we try our best to synchronize those with the advertiser intent or their interests, which is to drive acquisition of new customers and sales on Chewy. When we get deeper into the tactics, when we first started, we were just running experimentation, which I think is incredibly important, right? Rapid, high velocity experimentation. But we didn't really know how to define good, neutral, or bad in the context of an A/B test. And over time, we got stronger and stronger at that. And what we also did to increase velocity was establish a good, neutral, bad framework for each team that we had to partner with in order to launch. An ads team within an organization like Amazon, and even at Chewy now, can be fairly large, but where we're working on those surfaces, we own none of them. So we have to work with other teams, and different teams are at different stages of the shopping funnel in the context of retail, where they have different objectives for their customers. So when I say a framework, it's, okay, are these metrics good? That's good. That's a checkbox. Are these ad metrics strong enough to make a trade-off? That's a checkbox. Now we can launch. We didn't have that when we first started, which created a lot of churn and thrash on needing to have meetings with senior leaders that needed to get together and make trade-offs kind of live based on their interpretation of data. But by establishing that framework, we were able to move forward much quicker, because if something wasn't controversial in the neutral or nearing the bad, and it was just good all across, it's just green light, go launch, and keep moving forward with innovation.
That's awesome. So I think that's something I think is definitely lacking is across the industry, is really understanding how do you work with those stakeholders in the rest of the business, right? Because everybody who's starting out an RMN, you're kind of getting dropped into usually a very established business, right? Like you really shouldn't build an RMN before it's pretty established.
Right.
You have people who, you're now the new group, and everybody's working. What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to mess with my experience or mess with my current merchant relationships? So being able to have those key metrics that you can show them, right? And I'm assuming it's, just around customer usability and order flow and add to cart, and like, you don't have to get into all the specifics, but I think, it's really being able to show the effectiveness of like, hey, this actually improves the experience. or this at least doesn't hurt the experience. This,
Yeah.
it definitely doesn't hurt the order flow, or
Right.
those things that they're worried about.
Well, you bring up a really good point. I will say just our metrics are advanced, but they're nothing that, anyone wouldn't be able to imagine in terms of how we make decisions. The thing you mentioned that I think is incredibly important if you're on, day 0 through 180 of being this new RMN leader is how do you build credibility with a product that is somewhat adversarial to what the product that the company has had for many, many years and is established? And I think the answer is very straightforward to me. Now, I talked about it more tactically in terms of a framework, but what is that framework actually doing? It's understanding your internal customers, right? I said by page, there are different objectives. You're building a framework that conforms to what is the definition of good for your enterprise values, as opposed to just the ads team. That type of empathy, almost being adversarial to yourself at first, and focusing more on a bias towards whatever the company values are, I think are going to make you stronger to build credibility and earn trust within your organization. But in all likelihood, it's going to do better for your product too.
Yeah.
Having that empathy and understanding and really thinking about how you build products from your internal team's perspectives. What do they care about? Because ad revenue is great. Obviously, it drives a lot of profit for you. But how do you think about more than that to what the greater impact to your organization, in my case, Chewy, is?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe if we use like a different example, I'm always curious people's opinion on this. You probably used Amazon for years and years and years. I've used Amazon for years and years. The ad load on Amazon now is impressively high.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think as a shopper has it gotten too high? Like, do you think there are just too many promoted listings? There are too many banners and promotions? Just kind of, I guess, as a shopper, but also as as somebody in retail media product, it's like,
yeah.
Do you think it's gone too far?
Having the exposure to ads that we've both had, we don't just see the sponsored label. We kind of understand how it's working.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, like I'm still a heavy user of Amazon. I think most people are. But there are alternatives. Is if you go hunting for ads, yes, you're going to find a lot. But if you focus on your core workflow loop, which in my case will be on Black Friday, I'm looking for a specific product, you're going to find that product on Amazon. And in most cases, if you're not looking for something incredibly generic, if you're the user that they've established is indifferent if the ad is an ad, as long as it's the product you're looking for, sure, you'll get it as an ad, but you're still getting the product you want.
Right.
So my perspective is when you just look at Amazon clicking through pages where you're deliberately looking for ad load and exposure, it feels like a lot. But I think what Amazon does a great job at for their customers, in many cases, although not all, is when I'm actually looking for something versus just looking for ads, I find it instantly.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's an ad, it doesn't bother me unless I need to scroll down past where my search kind of landed to find the product.
Right.
So I think they've done a good job. And, the insider in me thinks that they're dynamically allocating the density of ads based on the propensity of a user, where they've learned about potentially at the session level, maybe bucket you into some segment where let's just take the two of us, for example. Let's just use us as personas. James doesn't like ads. Well, we know that's not true though. And then Ben loves ads. We search for something on Amazon, that same search, I'm almost certain we get a different layout.
Yeah.
And
no,
we
absolutely
actually arrive at the same conversion, right? Like, so I think if you want to say Amazon has a lot of ads, yes. But if you take yourself out of the mindset of ad searching for ads and you just go and shop, it's fine. Now, I will say that with a caveat that doesn't mean that it would be the same experience that I would bring to Chewy. I do think we have an emphasis on our customers in a way where that type of ad load potentially doesn't work for us and doesn't work for other retailers. But to a point that I'll circle back to that we had much earlier in this conversation, trying to chase Amazon is not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because what they're probably doing on every single page load is more technology than you can build in 2 to 3 years, regardless of how fast you go, because they've had such a head start. We'll eventually catch up, but I'm not looking to say Amazon has something, so Chewy should have it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a funny point that like we have like the reverse of ad blindness. Like we probably both, because we've been doing this for, decades at this point, like we both are looking at it and we're overly interested in how many promoted listings there are, how many ads are here, how is this being set up, how are these targeted? Whereas you're right. Like I bet if I went and ask my mom, right, when she goes on Amazon, how many ads she notices, she'd probably be like, oh, I see one here or there, but hey, I was looking for this thing and I clicked on it and bought it and I was happy. Right.
Well, I just think about myself when I need something quick that I need to purchase from Amazon, like a non-pet product, since I'm at Chewy. The time it takes me to buy a product is seconds, right? And the ads have not interfered with that. But again, if you're just looking for ads, it's going to feel like a very heavy experience. So that's kind of where I stand, which is, I think Amazon's done a good job. Is that density and ad load right for Chewy? I think the answer is no. But have they done it well in the way that they're able to get you to buy what you want and drive ad revenue on top? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, no, and it's a very fair point too of thinking about, when you look at it, it's has to be optimized on a per user basis.
Yeah.
Of how does this user interact with ads? How do they react to ads? How competent are they in getting past them or finding what they're looking for, or how are easy are they going to be confused? Kind of the level of sophistication there. But I think that is that's a great future feature we should be building on our side, right? Like, how do we help retailers, dynamically change ad load based on what we know about the user?
And it doesn't even need to be likely as sophisticated as what they're doing, right? It can be something where you're just understanding your customer in some basic segments. I've got reactivating customers. I've got churned customers. And if you know a general reason why, maybe you have 4 layouts instead of 1 versus 1 customized for each user. So I think there are stepping stones for customers or companies to get there. I'm just saying those stepping stones don't necessarily result in the same experience that Amazon has. They're going to be bespoke and nuanced to what you learn about your customers and how they behave.
Yeah. So let's say I'm starting a new retail media network, or I just got hired to come into a company to build a new retail media network. I've listened to this podcast and I'm like, I really need somebody like Ben. I need a product lead to come in here and help me design what this retail media network is going to look like. How do you find that person?
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that, because in my case at the companies I've been at, I've been that person, so I haven't had to find them.
Yeah.
But I can't take credit for all of the work that is done here. What I'd say is be very deliberate in the expectations you have when you're sourcing candidates. Ensure that you're not looking for people that are only just good on paper, but you're asking the hard questions about how they synthesize ideas, how they deal with a large cross-functional mess that is created when you're a new org that is very new, trying to work with established teams. That deliberateness in terms of not just saying, oh, they've got 15 years in ad tech, they've been at other media networks, they can answer the basic questions, let's hire them. It's being incredibly deliberate in your interview. And if you're coming from the perspective of, let's say, maybe your first hire is a product hire and you're not an ad person at all, you're the person tasked with bringing on that person. To my point of empathy, see how they're going to be thinking broadly about the business and the things you do in order to craft their own business. Now, there's not like a perfect template to this, but I think there's a decent formula, which is figure out if they're going to think about more than just the ads themselves.
Right.
Because in the, I've brought this point up with you in the past, not on this call, but we're living in a world where retail media networks are growing. And a huge distinction about the ads in retail from the ads from your old print to digital publishers is it's no longer tertiary content. It is the content itself for consumption. And the ads people may understand the monetization well, but you need to find that ads person that is going to empathize and care about the business as much, because not only are you generating revenue from that click, but you need to create the flywheel to make sure that your customers are happy, the end users, as well as the advertisers are happy, where they continue to spend more with you. So
yeah,
I think it's a broader approach than just bringing in an ads expert.
Yeah, no, I think it absolutely makes sense. And I think it is the big difference in where we both started in the more traditional ad space.
Yeah.
Working with a publisher, and I think when you're at a retailer, it really is, it's all about, making customers happy with the products they're looking for. Right. Yeah. And ads are, a part of that, but it can't be separated and say, oh, I just care about the ad revenue. Right. Like you're part of that bigger ecosystem.
No, I'd agree with that. I think that's the right approach, the right thinking. And quite frankly, if the shoppers in the case of retail are happy and you're serving ads while they're happy, you're doing something right. Right.
Yeah.
Your advertisers are going to be happy if those two other events are happening, because it's just going to come through in performance. Right. So I think that's the right approach.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about product in retail media. I think this is going to be, illuminating for a lot of people. And so I'm sure you'll get some people reaching out on LinkedIn, asking you questions and trying to maybe help them find somebody like you for their retail media network.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I mean, pleasure working with you guys, and talking about this is fun because often we're so in our own world at our own retailers. Just to kind of abstract and think about it more broadly is pretty interesting. Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate it, James.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Retail Media. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this show with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you navigate the future of retail media. See you next time.